We're in Phoenix, Arizona, in a middle-class neighborhood. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Not exactly an hour of the day you'd expect there to be criminal activity.
911, what is your emergency?
I was just out in the alley, and I had an elderly neighbor who lives across from me. And he's laying in the backyard.
Is he there by himself?
No, he has a wife, and they're both elderly.
Do you know where she's at right
No,
now?
she might be in the house. I don't know.
Okay. Let me get the officers going out there.
It was just a routine day on patrol. We got the call, subject moaning in the backyard. When I was a kid, I lived 3 blocks from where this occurred. It was a nice, quiet neighborhood. You have an idea of what's reported, but a lot of times you find out that it's totally different.
The Phoenix Police Department arrives in this backyard. An elderly man is bleeding profusely from his head, and his hands are tied with duct tape.
He wasn't asking for help, he was asking for his wife. Where's my wife?
They turn and look at the house,
Your wife's inside?
and the interior door to the home is standing open. Is the suspect still here?
Call him back up.
Sir, stay still. Hold on.
Dispatch. Oh my God. There's a little body in here.
This was a horrible crime that we'd stumbled upon.
I spent my career closing murder cases. But I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective.
I am retired Sergeant Darren Birch. In 1998, I was a detective in the Adult Sex Crimes Detail with the Phoenix Police Department. When I was a young kid, I learned that my grandmother had been brutally raped when she was a child. And I realized very quickly, I hate criminals. It was a Monday, I remember it vividly. I get a call from my boss, which was unusual. I can still hear him saying the words. We have a home invasion of an elderly couple, and the woman was brutally raped. Every detective has that one case for whatever reason. This particular case is that one case for me.
What do we got?
We have 2 elderly victims in their 80s.
Birch is briefed by the officers on the scene that John and Hazel Durnovich live in this house. They've lived there for many, many years.
They were childhood sweethearts who'd grown old together. John was a big, spry man, worked in the construction industry so he could fix anything. Hazel was a beautiful woman. She was still running the show at the house, even at 81, you know, in great shape.
Birch learns they've both been removed by ambulance to a hospital, both in very critical condition. Birch looks at this crime scene and finds some things that are very disturbing to him. Birch is well experienced. He's seen about everything. This he'd never seen before.
Yeah, the scene was very violent. We had a lot of blood, a lot of weird items.
He sees an instrument laying on the floor that is covered in blood and has gray hair attached to the blood. This is a solid steel bar. This is the instrument used to bludgeon this victim. He sees a bloody flashlight. There is a can of Crisco vegetable paste open on the floor with a bloody imprint of the flashlight in the Crisco.
It was a horrible scene. This was about as grisly as it gets.
The rest of the house had that typical burglary ransacking look, where drawers were open, things were strewn about. It was hard to tell if anything was really missing.
Are they looking for money, weapons, jewelry, things that commonly can be turned into cash? Birch is still trying to determine what's happened here. Birch also wonders why one victim is inside this home, but her husband, John Dernovich, is in the backyard. Why would he go outside?
Over here, he found him on the ground.
In the backyard, there was this drag mark where we found John. It looked like he was in the area of the circuit breaker and had been dragged from that location on the side of the house. We could see the power box door was open.
And he looks at that box and he notices that the master switch is off. So somebody turned off the power to this home. Why would that happen?
Looking at the yard, we found this beautiful, pristine shoe print. It was beautiful. It was the only thing we had, but it was beautiful.
That's as useful as a fingerprint. It can be extremely unique. And if we find our man wearing a pair of Reeboks, we can match the shoe on his foot to the impression in that mud, which puts him at this crime scene.
All right, Don, you got it from here? Yep. All right.
First thing I did when I arrived at the hospital was talk to the doctors.
The doctor explains that Mr. Dernovich has suffered a subdural hematoma as a result of blunt force trauma. A subdural hematoma is a bruising of the brain.
Basically, the brain is swelling. He was hit about 5 times with a metal bar. John, I'm Detective Birch with the Phoenix Police Department. How you doing, John?
All right.
Do you remember what happened today, John?
Dernovich explains that he and his wife had been watching television when the power went off in the house. He told his wife he would go outside and check the circuit box.
Oh, maybe it's at the meter.
You walked out to the meter box?
Yeah.
He saw the box was open and the master switch was off.
And then the next thing he knows, he's on the ground.
And I know they hit me in the back of the head, and then started tying me up with tape.
And he then went unconscious and doesn't remember anything after that until he was awakened in a hospital by a doctor.
So I take it you want to prosecute?
Hell yeah.
Thank you, John.
Birch has learned something. The power box was the lure. You have a perpetrator who has a plan. He needs to draw somebody out of that house, and the way to do it is to turn off the power.
I kind of looked at this as a homicide in the sense that he intended to kill these people, especially the way he brutally attacked John and, in my estimation, left him for dead.
Whoever is responsible had conducted surveillance on this house. He knew a lot, and he took advantage of carrying out a plan that worked quite well.
Doc, what can you tell me about Hazel?
The doctor treating Hazel Dernovich says that she has a number of contusions and abrasions, in excess of 100, and she had been extensively tortured by assault much longer than her husband. And in the doctor's opinion, she was raped with an object. This draws Birch's memory back to that crime scene and explains why the bloody flashlight was bloody.
People look at a crime like this and they wonder, how could you attack an 81-year-old woman? It is the epitome of the coward. Guys like this always go for the most vulnerable targets.
This was a nice lady who had been brutalized beyond imagination. I was eager to talk to Hazel, see how she was doing, see if I could get some type of suspect information. Hazel, what I'd like to do is see if we can refresh your memory about what occurred, if you feel up to it.
I haven't felt very good all week.
It was difficult at first talking to her because it reminded me of my grandmother. This was a very petite, intelligent, feisty woman. I had to really work through that in terms of not crying or getting upset seeing this woman because she looked like she had been beaten half to death.
While Birch is speaking to her, he looks at her left hand.
And then I mentioned her wedding ring. I said, "Where's your wedding ring?"
Did this man take your wedding ring? And she said she doesn't remember, which is normal in a situation like that. It's a traumatic experience.
Then we talked about what she saw in terms of what this guy did. Hazel is wondering what's taken John so long.
He was outside and he had to come back in, and I wondered what happened. So I went down there, and it looked like there was another man there.
And she said she looked at this man and said, "What are you doing?" And he dropped her husband to the ground and said, "I'll show you what I'm doing."
He put electrical tape over my mouth.
Okay.
So I wouldn't scream.
And then he goes and starts ransacking. And then she remembers him coming back. And then he sexually assaults her.
In my own career, I have had elderly victims, and your heart just bleeds for them. What animal did this? You feel a need to find this person right now.
It was very, very painful for her in so many ways. So I focused on the suspect.
Let's talk about what he looked like, if you can, just for a little bit. How old was he, do you think?
Well, I would say maybe late 20s or 30s, something like that.
Okay. And how tall was he?
He was quite tall, and he had a mustache.
What race was he, do you know?
Just a white man, I would think. Maybe it was suntan, I don't know.
Maybe suntan?
Yeah.
That's a start. It's pretty vague, but it's better than Mr. X.
So I very quickly realized what I need to do is see if there's anyone else that knows about that house. And thankfully, there was a housekeeper. Once a week, somebody would come in and just clean the main areas.
And she said her name was Katie Powell, and she had a key to the house, but she doesn't work for us anymore. That draws Birch's attention.
I'm going to let you rest, okay?
Right.
Thank you, Hazel.
Now we've developed a name of somebody who has the ability to come and go from this home, who was terminated of their employment by the Dernoviches. Maybe it means nothing, maybe it means everything. Detective Darren Birch at Phoenix PD is investigating the brutal attack of an elderly couple, John and Hazel Dernovich.
This was a violent attack in their home. You're not human if it doesn't affect you in some way.
Detective Birch has interviewed the victims in this case and has learned that they terminated a housekeeper in the recent past. Her name is Katie Powell.
I scheduled a sit-down videotape interview, knowing that if something goes south, she lawyers up, I'll never see her again. I had to eliminate her as a suspect.
How's he feeling?
Better.
I started off very casual, not knowing where it was going to go.
Do you remember what you're doing that Monday? Don't have any idea.
I don't know.
Well, maybe that might be able to help you with it. Think back at, first of all, when you first realized something had occurred. Let's talk about that.
Oh my God.
What were you doing then?
I was sitting down watching TV. I could not believe what I was hearing. That's the only way I can describe it. I mean, it was just so devastating. It's like somebody hit me with a bat. It's the only way I can describe it. It hit me that hard.
She seemed very nice. She seemed genuinely concerned about John and Hazel. She didn't appear deceptive.
He said to her, "We understand you were fired by the Dernoviches. Can you tell us about that?"
I was OD'd on caretaking, and I don't think I had anything left. My cup was empty when it came to John and Hazel at that point. And I have a bad back, and I can only work. That's a big house for one person to clean. But I think Hazel was really getting attached to me. She loved me. I loved her. I always tell her, I love you guys. Be good to each other.
There wasn't really an issue with it in terms of bad blood. I didn't get that feeling at all.
Let's see here. Your work?
I was working at Jana King, a company my boyfriend runs.
And what's your boyfriend's name?
Terry. As a matter of fact, it was funny too because when all that happened, Terry had gone, "We were just over there."
When I learned that she had a boyfriend and he had been there, I had to really kind of look and decide whether or not there was a connection.
Birch is thinking like a cop. Everything about her says she's not a participant and has no knowledge of this offense. But her boyfriend, Terry Finley, is an X Factor. What about him?
He knew about the house. He knew about the layout. All those things that the suspect might know, he would know. So I had to eliminate him.
Mr. Finley? Detective Birch, Phoenix PD. Mind if I ask you a couple questions?
Sure.
Birch then explains that he's in possession of information that Finley had recent contact with the Dernovich family, and they've been attacked in their home.
No.
Finley is shocked.
I was looking for a very angry criminal who had a criminal history of violence. He didn't fit that bill. He really didn't. I had a tight window. We knew when this crime occurred. He owned a business, and he also worked for someone at the same time. And so I was able to go and check on his work.
Mr. Finley was at work during the time frame of the crime, so he had no opportunity to be a participant in it.
All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you. No problem.
So what could be a lead is gone. Mr. Finley could not have done this. Birch is now in an unenviable position of having the best reliance on evidence found at this scene.
With such a violent scene, generally you get some type of evidence like sweat, DNA from the skin where someone's grabbing someone. Rape, you're going to have some type of DNA generally. I was shocked when he told me, "We have nothing."
Nothing but the shoe print.
We don't have any DNA. We have no fingerprints. We had nothing other than a shoe print in the back alley.
No DNA, no fingerprints.
I may have had doubts with any other crime scene detective if they had told me they had nothing. But from Don, I knew for him to come up with nothing, there was nothing.
The indications are he wore gloves. Once again, a planned attack. This is not this guy's first rodeo. He knows not to leave touch DNA and other physical evidence behind.
This was a very difficult case from the get-go. They had experienced crime scene folks go in there with a fine-tooth comb, and they couldn't get anything that could lead them in the direction of this suspect, because the suspect was really careful. I mean, these crimes are really just mind-boggling.
Police have determined that the perpetrator selects his weapons from what he discovers in the premises.
In this particular MO, the suspect came with nothing other than gloves. He literally got the duct tape, the metal bar used to attack both John and Hazel, the flashlight. All these items were already at the scene, and that actually shows a sign of a organized ability to adapt to what's there. So he will have a criminal history, and sadly, he's gonna have a future until we catch him. The crime scene didn't give us any leads, so we have to recanvass the area. We talk with neighbors.
You never know what people see.
I'm with the police department. Sorry to wake you up.
But the only thing that Birch learns is that everyone thinks that Hazel and John Dernovich are wonderful. Why would anyone want to hurt them? They're the nicest people in this neighborhood.
I got to almost know the couple through the friends and neighbors. It was a love story. John and Hazel were grade school sweethearts, and they complemented each other, and they grew together.
They'd been together for 60-plus years. You know, they had a life together and were enjoying perhaps the last act when this terrible turn of events took place.
So there's more positive news about the family, but no news about who Mr. X might be.
Hazel called me every day. And I knew something was up because I got a voice message from her.
First message.
This is Hazel, and I just wanted to tell you that John had a heart attack Wednesday, and he's in the Baptist hospital, and I am too, so if you'd like to reach us, you can call us. Thank you.
I was so focused on the investigation, I didn't realize he was in harm's way and he was going to die. For them to, in the golden years, be brutalized like this and have that beautiful marriage end with such horrible tragedy. Not that I needed something to keep my focus on this case, but I just could not erase it. I could not erase that message.
Birch was overcome by anger, by rage, by guilt that he hadn't found who did this yet. I've had cases like that. I know what it feels like, and it is awful. It is beyond awful.
Failure wasn't an option, and that really sounds like cliche, I know it, but it really is so true. We could not fail Hazel and John with this case. We had to solve it. We had to give them justice.
Darren Birch is a very good man, and I'm not at all surprised that he was the one that took it upon himself to see what I think would initially appear to be an almost impossible case. It would be him that took it on and said, hell with that. I'm going to solve this, and I'm going to find that guy. Am I surprised that Darren did that? Yeah, I'm impressed, not a bit surprised. To label him just by his profession that he was a police officer, and he was that and a great one, but it's sort of limited him because he's just a great man and a good guy.
After John died, everything seemed to kind of wash away. I had nothing left. So now it's time to look at crime analysis again in a different way. And that's when I really looked at the crime scene photos, and I noticed her hand, and there was no wedding ring. And it reminded me about something that I couldn't deal with at the time because I didn't know what it meant. I looked at that photo and thought, I wonder if he removed it from her. She just didn't remember that.
This gives him something else to use in searching for similar cases. So he begins by looking at cases where wedding rings or jewelry has been taken from the victim during a violent sexual assault.
And that's when I found 3 robberies and a rape where the suspect physically pulled the ring off. That was huge. That was my guide. Because now I had not just the Dernovich crime scene, I had 4 other crime scenes I could look at to try to find this monster.
This is the same guy doing precisely the same crime because he is a serial rapist. Detective Darren Birch is investigating the attack on John and Hazel Dernovich. It's already cost John Dernovich his life. He has discovered other cases involving precisely the same MO.
This is a serial rapist by their very nature. It's what they do, what they want, what they live for.
He'd sneak up behind people in the dark of night or attack them while they're laying in their beds. He was brutalizing, tormenting these people who really are the most vulnerable victims.
When Birch is reviewing these 4 cases he finds in Phoenix, he notices that one particular victim seems to have more details than any of the others.
The one victim that really was wonderful in terms of helping police was Sophia Rosenthal.
Thanks for coming down. We appreciate it.
Whatever it takes to find him.
She is one of the best witnesses Birch has ever encountered.
That's the only way I can describe it.
She says this man recently broke into her home, attacked her, stole her wedding ring off her finger with such force that he broke her finger.
During my interview with her, I kept referring to the suspect as a white male, and all the other reports said white male.
Or Mediterranean look.
She distinctly remembers his appearance.
She literally said he was Mediterranean, and that was huge because that gave me another direction to take this.
Birch decides to put her with a police artist so they can draw this individual. But she's also an artist and asks if she can draw the picture. Now, that's extremely unusual, but Rosenthal has the skills necessary. And she draws a very good drawing of an individual. Birch is elated that he has this drawing of this guy to show to Hazel Dernovich.
Unfortunately, the next time I interviewed her, she had a hard time talking about the rape. She could not identify him. From the composite that Sophia gave me, she couldn't give me any kind of description of the face itself, as if what she saw was a blank face. I think her memory of that event was so skewed by the horrific nature of that crime. It's just so brutally sad. I want to give her justice. And at least now we had a description. We had a composite. We had enough where we could find him. We could then build a case around it.
Birch has no idea where this guy is. He could be anywhere and could have been other places doing precisely the same thing. This is what motivates him to make a national broadcast. He puts together a bulletin which he sends all over the country through a system called the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, asking for detectives who can respond with a similar case.
I had to catch him. We had to. He's going to kill someone if he hasn't already killed someone.
When you put out these bulletins, you wait for it to simmer on the stove to see if it makes soup. You're hopeful you're going to get replies, but you have no way of knowing if you will.
At this point, oh my gosh, 9 months is going by. The frustrations were horrible, heart-wrenching. Every week, I put that bulletin out, week after week, after month after month.
In 1998, I was a detective with the Oakland Park Police Department in South Florida. Teletypes would come through 24 hours a day from all agencies. Each day when I came to work, I would kind of skim through them to see if anything pertained to what I was doing. And there was a teletype from Detective Birch from Phoenix. And I'm reading the teletype, and this could have been reading my own police report. It was the same exact story.
I still got chills thinking about that phone call. Karen told me I have a case just like yours and it happened on October 20th. October 20th is literally the next day after the Dernovich crime. That shocked me. To be that brazen, such a sexual predator, that 24 hours later, he does a crime other side of the country.
I was assigned a home invasion case that resulted in a sexual battery. It was an elderly couple. The husband was disabled. The suspect had forced his way into the home when she answered the door. He came with no supplies. He used her plastic gloves. He immediately took her wedding ring. After he finished ransacking the house, the sexual battery took place.
She then tells Birch the critical piece of information he was so hopeful to receive.
We We did lift one fingerprint off the dresser that he had left there prior to putting the gloves on. And we had a hit on the print. It matched to Mike Metlow, who also went by the name of Mike Urich.
I literally did a happy dance and yelled to my boss, "We got him, we got a name." And that's everything, because now you can compare prints and DNA, you can do all those things, you just have to have a name. We didn't have that before, it was so exciting.
Immediately, I tried to do a criminal history on him, and I came up with numerous names, numerous dates of birth, driver's licenses.
She realizes that he is a member or a former member of a Romani clan.
Romani immigrants from Eastern Europe celebrating the birthday of a Chicago Roma king with music, dancing, and a traditional feast. But law enforcement officials say there are other families who have no connection to this one that are involved in organized crime rings. For decades, they roamed America in caravans of travel trailers and pickup trucks. But police say these criminals have changed with the times.
Become so bold now that they fly to various parts of the country and rent vehicles out there.
Most of the cases I dealt with were over monetary contractual deals. It was always roof repairs, driveway repairs, things that weren't done or accomplished. Somebody comes out and says they can do it for $800 cash today, and you don't see them the next day, and your roof's still in disrepair. That's called a learning lesson.
It was an incredible education, learning about the crime syndicates, these organized families. I knew nothing other than what I saw in movies.
Mr. Urich is a member of one of these groups, which very conveniently explains his touring around the country. They move to avoid arrest.
Mike Urich is with the family doing these cons and doing these scams, but there's a certain part of him, that sexual predator, that violent nature that needs to attack women is there. And I think at some point he goes rogue, he goes off the rails, and he starts doing these side crimes.
She tells Birch that, in her opinion, it's likely Urich has fled the state of Florida. Now the question becomes, where is he?
There was no leads. We canvassed the neighborhood. I found one neighbor that had found a yellow station wagon during the time of the crime parked 2 houses away. He thought it was odd because it had Arizona tags on it, and that was a rental house that was vacant. So I got a search warrant for the townhome. It was a jackpot. It was filled with large green garbage bags, packed floor to ceiling, every room. I found a huge duffel bag in one of the closets filled with jewelry. Later we figured out it was over $250,000 in jewelry in it.
So there in this crime scene, rings, lots and lots of rings. My victims' rings were there, and I couldn't believe it.
I found about 20 boxes of brand new sneakers, Reebok sneakers. When I had talked to Detective Birch, he said he had a footprint left at his scene from a Reebok sneaker. So at that point, I took scans of them and sent him the scans I had to see if they matched any of his footprints that were left at the scene.
I was so excited with that, because now I can bring in the only evidence I have with the Dernovich case. It was that shoe print.
Birch is now armed with more than a drawing and a description. He's armed with a photograph and a name. It's Mike Urich, and this is his picture. He adds that to his bulletin and sends that across the country, and what returns is a flood of information.
Police departments from across the country are reporting activity of Mike Urich. So I'm getting calls from Nevada, Utah, Texas, New Mexico, Indiana. I'm just getting flooded calls.
One of the replies to Birch's bulletin comes from the Chicago Police Department. They informed Birch that patrol officers responded to a crime in progress where Michael Urich was attacking an elderly woman without realizing that her daughter was hiding upstairs and was on the phone to 911. Chicago PD arrives and arrests Mr. Urich in the act of committing the crime. When they take him before a judge and a court, Urich's attorney argues that he suffers from mental incompetence.
He was convicted and sentenced to a mental health ward. And I was able to explain to him who this monster was that they had in custody. They had no idea any of this was happening. They just had their one crime. And because of that, he was going to be getting out real soon. So we all suddenly went from we had plenty of time in the world to we have to go now.
Detective Birch has been working the Dernovich case and has obtained information that his suspect is Mike Urich, who is currently in a psychiatric ward in Illinois. Birch's plan is to go there, interrogate Urich, and get information from him that allows him to be charged in the Dernovich case. There are probably a dozen other states that want a piece of Mike Urich, and Birch is determined to get the first slice of Urich's pie. Birch is aware he needs to move quickly.
Darren realized that there are other cops in other cities that are going to grab this guy. And he said, you know what, for John and Hazel, I'm going to make sure they come back to Arizona.
He takes his sergeant and they fly to Illinois to interrogate Mike Urich before he's released and in the wind again.
What was nice about having a supervisor like Jim Markey is that he was like a detective. He truly cared about these cases and excited like a detective when they're starting to piece it together, when the trail starts to make sense and everything goes to a suspect and you get him in custody, that excitement of getting your man. On top of that, the brutal nature of this criminal and these poor victims that lay in the wake. He was as galvanized to make sure this guy paid for these crimes. So it was great. And it was kind of nice having him there because I had this supervisor. There was a lot of pressure. And so I was nervous. I've done so many interviews in my 30 years. It was different in the sense that I had so much at stake. I kept hearing the recording of Hazel talking about when John died. I wanted to get him to make some admission.
He has a cassette tape with a 30-minute span. He's got 30 minutes to have Urich say something incriminating.
And when he started walking up, he's a big guy.
He could have squished me with one thigh. I mean, that's how big this guy was.
And he has that look, like, the only way I can describe it is arrogance. And he comes in, and there's a calm that came over me. Because now, yeah, I got you. And now you gotta play by my rules.
This is Detective Birch with the City of Phoenix Police Department, and I'm with Sergeant James Markey to interview one Michael Urich or Michael Metlow, who is an inmate at the Dixon Correctional Facility. And you are Mike Metlow? Yep. Okay, Mike, I'm Detective Birch, and I'm from a long way to talk to you.
As the conversation begins, he waives his rights and says he has nothing to hide. Perfect, Mr. Urich. Let's have a conversation. Birch begins asking innocuous questions. Could we have an address for you?
I can't tell you exactly the address, but it was in Phoenix. You remember those freeways? Because that kind of helped me get an idea of what part of Phoenix. The 27th Street, Camelback. 27th Street, Camelback? Yeah, 27th Street.
I had so much adrenaline and excitement by this time that I was containing it because I knew he had just given up himself at the location where the Dervish lived at the time of the crime.
He doesn't react to that, but in his mind, strike one for Mr. Urich.
I'll be honest, it's a guilty pleasure. It's a guilty pleasure to be able to look at that monster in the face and use a ruse against him. So I talked about the property aspect of his crimes. He was stealing rings.
Now, I don't even understand why you even coming with it. Well, you guys came all this way to this? Why do you think we're here? Yeah, think about it. I don't even know what you're talking about.
There's a way of talking to the con men. You have to confront them every time they tell you a lie or every time they change their story, and you can't let it wait.
Hey, Mike, I'll be honest with you. We're going to go for the kill zone. We're going to go for the whole enchilada, Mike. We're not here.
They think they're conning you. You got to confront them immediately because it throws them off.
Jim Markey showed the shoe print and said, well, these are your shoes, as if that's a given.
When you see those pictures, look at this. You'll notice the Reebok for the shoe print. And I got lucky on this one. I really did. These are very unusual shoes. They did a warrant in Florida and came up with the same shoe box, which is of this special type of shoe.
And then he bid on it.
That's it, my shoe print.
I was shocked. My jaw may have dropped because I did not expect that.
That's strike 2 and 3. He's an instinctual animal when it comes to physical attack, but he's a moron when it comes to anything else.
We had very little time left in the recording, so I felt this was the perfect time to bring the hammer down. We have nothing to lose, and we have everything to gain.
Okay. I mean, really straight with you. We have 2 victims that positively identified you. One of them did a composite, which was a beautiful composite, actually. But now we have these 2 other rings. And we know it's you because it's a print and it matched it with this and with prints that we got at the scene. And with this photo, we had the case. It was a done deal. And then the cherry on top is what we would call is physical evidence. Physical evidence doesn't lie. People can make mistakes. People can lie. But physical evidence, prints don't lie. And is it not Phoenix right now? It is.
When you get a statement like that, then you just hit the ball out of Yankee Stadium. You did this in a few minutes, and Urich is beyond cooperative in terms of providing you with the rope you need to hang him with.
And the look on his face, that's when he exploded. It was like popping a balloon.
There's more than sufficient evidence to cause the extradition of Mr. Urich back to Phoenix, Arizona to face charges in the Dernovich case. And since they have him first, everyone else is going to have to wait.
Afterwards, we were giddy with excitement. We got him. It just felt really good. So good that before we hit the plane back to Phoenix, we saw a Chicago Cubs game at Wrigley Field. It was really cool. It was just one of those moments that I'll never forget.
So if you consider what Urich did in the Dernovich case, he's thinking about this. He's surveilling them. He identifies them as weak and elderly, easily overcome. When he climbed over that fence, Urich opened the shed and he finds the bar from a weight set. He picks it up and walks to the power box to kill the main power supply to the house.
John was the handyman. So when the power went out, there wasn't even a second thought what John was going to do. He was going to check the breakers. Idea of a home invasion, both husband and wife brutally beaten, gagged, bound, and then for her to be raped was beyond the pale.
After he assaults Hazel, he takes her wedding ring. He commits this violent, horrible crime, goes right back out over the same fence, leaves his shoe print in the mud, and goes on his merry way. He's off to find another victim.
As soon as we take the flight back to Phoenix, we have the photographic lineup that I've done with these other victims, these robbery victims.
That's him.
And every one of them was able to positively identify Mike Urich as the person who attacked them. I have all this great stuff, this literally, truly a mountain of evidence. He pled out to a lot of crimes. He pled out to the sexual assault of Sophia. He did plead out to attacking John and Hazel. It was just a matter of sentencing him.
He knows that he's going to be locked up in a box for the rest of his days, and decides the coward's way out is to end his life. He makes a noose out of a bedsheet and hangs himself in the cell.
I was glad. He saved the victims from having to go to court. I was very happy to hear that he killed himself. I really was. It was this beautiful love story. And for it to end on such a horrific note of not just tragedy, but torment, that hurts.
To have something like this happen to him, you think, why? And I don't know if there's ever going to be a good answer to that.
As an investigator, you want to give everyone justice. The culmination of this case, the arrest, that was all because of the Dernoviches. Their ability to provide me a detailed account of what he did is what gave me the persistence to continue this investigation and look for other potential victims. Because of them, we got this monster.
Detective Darren Birch doesn't quit. He does what he was made to do. Find the bad guy. Somebody has to.
Not because he wanted to help, but because he wanted to see the fear in the eyes of those he was hunting. He fed on the chaos. Think about the audacity of a man who makes a phone call to a grieving family and speaks with such chilling detachment. He was playing a game of cat and mouse, testing the authorities, laughing behind his palm. The FBI profilers at the time, they were in the infancy of their craft, yet they saw through facade. They saw a man who was white, in his 20s, likely a loner with military experience, physically fit, and above all, a man who kept souvenirs. They knew he would call again on a significant date, the 1-year anniversary of his crime, because to him, that abduction was not a tragedy. It was a centerpiece, a performance piece of his own twisted vanity. The tragedy of Sandy Dickman, a young woman just trying to live her life, only deepens a stain on Meyerhofer's soul. When they found the remains, the bones, the teeth, the ash, they were looking at the residue of a man who treated life like garbage. The fact that he lived right next to the scene of his crimes, that he walked among the very people he terrorized, is the classic arrogance of a psychopath who believes he is smarter than the world. He passed polygraphs. He fooled investigators with his charm. But he could not outrun the weight of his own disgusting habits. The receipts, the blood-stained sheets, the list of campsites, they were the signatures of a man who believed he was untouchable. He kept a checklist of children, for heaven's sake. That is not just a crime. That is a sickness of the highest order. When he finally confessed, he did it on his terms, trying to bargain for his own skin. But the truth is, he was a coward who took his own life before he could ever truly answer for what he had done. He was a man who killed a young boy, Bernie Pullman, a murder he committed when he was still a boy himself, and he never gave a reason. Why would he? People like him do not have reasons. They have compulsions. They have voids where their empathy should be. They look at a child and they see an object, a toy to be discarded. It is a haunting reflection on the nature of evil. You have a mother, Marietta, who through some miracle of the human spirit manages to reach a point of forgiveness. That is not for him, that is for her, to survive the wreckage of a life he tried to destroy. I tell you, humanity has a way of surprising you. Even when you are staring directly into the face of a monster who represents the very worst of what we are capable of becoming. Human beings are strange creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial of reasons. Reasons that would make any rational person look at them and ask, is this real life? You see, the darkness in a person does not always arrive with a storm. Sometimes it creeps in like a silent shadow, festering in the quiet corners of a home, waiting for that one moment when the weight of a lifetime finally crushes the spirit. I have spent a lifetime looking into the abyss, and I tell you, when you peel back the layers of a life destroyed by obsession or the crushing burden of caretaking, you do not just find a killer. You find a tragedy that was years in the making. Let us speak of the first case, Shirley Pierce. She was a woman who radiated sunlight, a Southern belle with a heart as big as the region she called home. She had her life, her daughter, her grandson, and a man named Chuck Reeves who promised her a future. It was supposed to be a golden chapter. But then there's the other side of that coin, the side occupied by Marlene Johnson. Marlene was a woman who defined herself by her possessiveness and an ego that could not tolerate a world where she was not the center of gravity. She lived in a warped reality where she convinced herself that surely a woman who simply existed and performed her duties was the architect of a grand affair with her husband. My, the arrogance of the jealous mind is truly a spectacle to behold. Marlene did not just watch Shirley. She studied her, she stalked her, she hired people to track her, all while her own mind fractured into a million jagged pieces of delusion. When she finally acted, it was not the work of a rational mind. It was an explosion of pure, unadulterated rage. She did not just take a life. She attempted to erase the evidence, using bleach like a pathetic painter trying to white out a masterpiece of carnage. But the truth has a funny way of leaving footprints, and in this case, those footprints were etched in the very DNA she tried to scrub away. She thought she was untouchable, standing there in the courtroom, demure and professional. But a jury saw exactly what I saw. A coward, a woman who sacrificed her own humanity on the altar of her own twisted jealousy. It is absolutely unbelievable. Then there's a second tale, one that settles deep in the marrow of your bones. Barbara and Debbie Burns. This was not a story of jealousy, but one of suffocating, relentless duty. Barbara was a woman who gave up her entire youth, her autonomy, her very self, to care for a sister who was trapped in the mind of a child. For 40 years, she was a nurse, a mother, and a protector, all while the sister she loved treated her with a kind of thoughtless cruelty that only a dependent can inflict. And then the money. That cursed inheritance that was supposed to be their salvation became the final nail in their shared coffin. When the money vanished, the reality of their existence, the poverty, the codependency, the endless, grinding cycle of demand and resentment, clashed with such violence that Barbara simply broke. She did not have a plan. She did not have a motive that made any sense in the light of day. She had a breaking point. When she pulled that trigger, she was not just ending her sister's life. She was trying to end her own prison, living in a trailer with the remains of your own blood for weeks, surrounding yourself with air fresheners as if you could mask the scent of your own ruined soul. That is not something you walk away from. You have to be kidding me. She confessed, she served her time, and she walked out into a world that no longer recognized her. These cases tell us that the thin line between a good person and a monster is often drawn by the circumstances we are forced to endure. We look for monsters under the bed, but often the real monsters are just people who have been pushed until there is nothing left but the urge to snap. It is a sobering reminder that we are all just one bad day, one crushing responsibility, or one jealous thought away from a life we can never take back. I tell you, it is enough to make you shake your head at the fragility of it all. People think they know what they are capable of until they are standing at the edge of that abyss. And let me tell you, it is a very long way down. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most pathetic, senseless reasons you can imagine. They trade a lifetime of potential, a heart that beats and dreams, for a moment of cold, calculated darkness. You look at a case like this, and you have to ask yourself, what happens to a person that makes them believe their own petty grievances are worth the price of a soul? I have seen it all in my time, but some things, they just stick to your ribs. My, you have to be kidding me. Let us walk through the desert heat of Arizona, back to 1988. Pamela Pitts was 19 years old, a young woman with a smile that could light up a room and a spirit that was just beginning to find its wings. She had everything in front of her, but she made a mistake. She walked into the orbit of Shelley Norgard. Now, people like Shelley, they have holes in them where their conscience ought to be. I look at the life Shelley lived, and I see a trail of broken things. Abandonment issues, they call it. She felt the world was against her, that she was owed something, and when life did not provide, she decided to take it. She was like a shadow moving to the lives of others, leeching off their light until she decided to extinguish it entirely. Pamela was outgoing, artistic, and kind. She was a glue in her family. When she moved in with Shelley, she thought she was gaining a friend. She did not know she was moving in with a predator. Shelley was always telling stories, spinning webs, always looking for someone to blame for the chaos she created in her own head. When the money got tight and the friendship soured, when Pamela dared to want a life of her own, away from Shelley, that was a trigger. Shelley could not handle the rejection. She could not handle being left behind. To someone like her, a friend leaving is not just a goodbye. It is a personal affront. It is a crime. And so, on a September night, 1988, in a place locals called the Gordo Pit, the unthinkable happened. Pamela was beaten and left to burn. Think about that for a second. The brutality of it, the absolute disrespect for a human life. Whoever did this, they did not just want her dead, they wanted her erased. They wanted her identity to be ash in the wind. Investigators found what was left of her 13 days later. The medical examiner, he saw the heat-kill fly larvae in the char, and he knew what we all knew deep down. This was an act of profound, gut-wrenching hatred. For years, the case went cold. The rumor mill churned. Satanic cults. Ritualistic killings. The usual nonsense people invent when they cannot stomach the banality of pure evil. It was never a cult. It was just a jealous, broken person who thought she could get away with it because she was clever enough to lie. And for a long time, she even killed again. Ray Clerks, a young man who had the audacity to plan a future that did not include her. She shot him, stuffed him in a waterbed liner, and dropped him down a mine shaft. 2 lives, 2 futures, gone because Shelley Norgard could not stand to be alone. When they finally brought her to justice, when the evidence, that flashlight, that confession she was eventually forced to make, came to light, you saw the true face of the killer. It was not a monster from a movie. It was someone who, when cornered, could only offer a hollow, pathetic account of hitting someone until they stopped breathing. She claimed it was an accident. I tell you, there is no accident in pouring gasoline on a body. That is a choice. That is a signature of hate. Shelley walked out a free woman at age 50. Time served for the life she took in a mine shaft. Her confession for Pamela's death effectively just closing a file. It is a tragedy, but it is a reality of the system. Pamela Pitts deserved a full life. She deserved to go to beauty college, to see the world, to be the big sister she always was. Instead, she became a lesson in the fragility of life and the darkness that can dwell in the person sitting right next to you. You look at her father, Paul, and you see the weight of 30 years of not knowing. That is the real crime here. Not just a murder, but the theft of peace, the theft of time. You have to be kidding me if you think justice was fully served. But at least the truth finally crawled out of the dark. And in this business, sometimes that is all you get. Human beings, they are strange, fragile creatures. They will trade their very souls for a handful of silver, or in this case, for the hollow comfort of keeping up appearances. They kill for the most pathetic, unimaginative reasons you could ever conjure up. My. I tell you, you have to be kidding me. You look at a woman like Margaret Abernathy, a pillar of her community, a grandmother, a matriarch who built an empire from the ground up, and you think to yourself, who could possibly want to snuff out that light? And then you find the answer, and it turns your stomach because it was hiding in plain sight, sitting right at the dinner table. February the 4th, 1991, LaGrange, Georgia. A picturesque place, or so they tell you. It is the kind of town where everybody knows your business before you have even finished your morning coffee. Priscilla Matula, the daughter, calls 911. She says her mother has been hurt in a burglary. She finds her on the bathroom floor, blood everywhere. Now, when I hear a story like that, My antenna goes up. We arrive, and the house is a crime scene. A back window, a broken pane, the appearance of a forced entry. It looked like a burglary, but something was off. It was too neat. The drawers were pulled out, but nothing of real value. The electronics, the televisions, they were all still there. You have to be kidding me. A thief in a hurry does not leave the goods behind to curate a display. For the police, it was a staged scene, and in my experience, when a scene is staged, you are not looking for a stranger. You are looking at someone who shared a life with the victim. Margaret Abernathy was a woman of substance. She was generous, a businesswoman who supported her children through every storm. And Priscilla, the baby of the family, was right there by her side, involved in every transaction, every club, every detail of the family car dealership. They were inseparable, or so it seemed, but money is a corrosive thing. It eats away at bonds that you think are unbreakable. Margaret had helped Priscilla and her husband, Nick, buy their own dealership, pouring $130,000 into their dreams. But dreams built on debt have a way of waking you up with a scream. The medical examiner gives us the truth that the staging tried to hide. Margaret was shot twice in the head with a small caliber weapon. One shot in the bedroom, one in the bathroom. The evidence showed that after the first shot, Margaret had actually tried to stop her own bleeding with toilet tissue. Think about that for a second. She was alive, she was suffering, and she was alone. The shooter had to come back to finish it. That is not a robbery. That is an execution. That is cold. We start pulling the threads, and the whole tapestry begins to unravel. We find out that just 2 days before her murder, Margaret had been to the bank, and she was furious. She had discovered the truth about her daughter's business practices. Priscilla had been running a check kiting scheme, robbing Peter to pay Paul, juggling $30,000 here and there to make the books look balanced when they were bleeding red. Margaret was done. She was going to cut Priscilla off, take her off the accounts, and strip her of her authority. Priscilla was going to lose everything. Her status, her business, her lifeline. When you back a desperate person into a corner, they do not always choose a high road. They choose the darkness. Priscilla, looking at the abyss of financial ruin, decided to settle the account once and for all. She lied about her whereabouts. She fabricated a story about a post office trip with long lines. But she forgot one thing: witnesses. A convenience store clerk saw her near the house that morning. A neighbor saw her vehicle in the driveway. Her alibi was a house of cards, and it collapsed the moment we breathed on it. And then, the audacity of the woman. Even while out on bond, she tries to manipulate a witness, calling and trying to adjust memories, try and make the truth go away. She was not even crying for her mother. She was crying for herself. During her interviews, she would not even acknowledge the murder. She talked around it, cold and calculating. When the jury finally heard the evidence, they saw what we saw: a daughter who valued her status more than her own mother's life. She was found guilty and sentenced to life. I have spent my life looking into the eyes of people who have done the unthinkable. I tell you, it stays with you. A daughter killing her mother over money? It is unimaginable. It forces you to look into a dark place, into the abyss of human greed. The Abernathy family died on that day, too. They lost their grandmother, their matriarch, and they lost their trust in one another, all for money that did not exist. It is a tragedy of the highest order, and it makes you realize that sometimes the ties that bind are the very things that end up being used to strangle you. My, people are just the strangest creatures. Human beings are peculiar creatures. They kill for the most ridiculous reasons you could possibly imagine, and sometimes the perpetrators are the very people who spent their entire lives caring for their own victims. My, this is a tale of blind sacrifice and a bloody conclusion that no one saw coming. St. Petersburg is a beautiful city, a sleepy little town for retirees. But behind the mobile homes on Yellow Pine Drive, darkness always knows how to hide. In May of 2005, when a cleaning crew arrived to clear out a foreclosed property, they did not find the vacant home they expected. They found sheets draped over everything, bowls of potpourri, and air fresheners scattered in every corner. Do you understand the implication of that? It was a desperate attempt of someone trying to mask the stench of a body decomposing for months. When they reached the final bedroom and tried to lift the bedding, the sticky feeling of the blankets coming apart like Velcro told them this was no ordinary cleanup. A human foot poked out from a plastic bag. It was gut-wrenching. When we arrived on the scene, the stench permeated every inch of that trailer. We could not initially identify the victim, only that she had been there for a very long time. Through tax records, we confirmed the home belonged to sisters Barbara and Deborah Burns. Deborah, who had suffered neurological damage from a young age, and Barbara, the devoted sister who had spent 40 years serving as her nursemaid, her babysitter, and her sole provider. I tell you, that kind of burden is more than any human being should have to carry. After their mother passed, and they were sent in Arlington, the young man became overwhelmed and broke down. He confessed his involvement, but insisted that he had not acted alone. He revealed that his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him to participate in what was presented as a trip to Arlington to assist with a specific task. According to Willie, they had traveled from Houston to Arlington on June 9th, 2012. He claimed that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment, allowing him to enter without forcing the door. Once inside, they had intentionally scattered items, left a beer bottle wrapped in the blue bandana, and placed the pills and marijuana cigarette to create the illusion of a gang-related burglary. When the elderly couple returned home, a physical struggle ensued. Willie admitted to assisting his uncle in restraining the couple, after which they were secured with duct tape and placed in the bedroom closet before the two men departed back to Houston. When pressed by detectives as to why they would target an elderly couple they did not know, Willie pointed to a spiritual advisor in Houston named Daphne Wright. He explained that his uncle had met with Daphne, who claimed that a family owed her a substantial amount of money and had refused to pay. According to Willie, Daphne had suggested that if the debt could not be resolved, she wanted the individuals involved permanently removed, orchestrating the plan and providing the key to the residence. With this crucial testimony, investigators moved swiftly to locate Bobby Guillory. In December of 2015, detectives located the 52-year-old Bobby at his residence in Katy, Texas, and placed him under arrest. Faced with the reality of the charges and the confession of his nephew, Bobby also chose to cooperate, expressing deep remorse and fear. Bobby confirmed that he had been experiencing severe financial difficulties in 2011 after losing his job. He claimed that Daphne Wright had approached him, offering him $10,000 to carry out the task. He portrayed Daphne as a powerful figure who managed her clients with extreme authority, operating almost as a spiritual creditor. Bobby explained that the financial arrangement between Daphne and the Sewing family had grown extraordinarily complicated over many months. Chow Tran and Hong Lu had continuously sought Daphne's spiritual services on credit, believing that her rituals were essential to saving their business. Over time, this accumulated debt had ballooned to an immense sum estimated to be between $250,000 and $280,000. When Daphne demanded payment, the family was unable to produce the funds. Knowing that the couple held significant life insurance policies, Daphne allegedly realized that the payout from these policies could resolve the outstanding debt. According to Bobby, Daphne had instructed him on how to proceed, even providing him with a key to the apartment, a key that she claimed to have received directly from Chow Tran. Part 5. The Scales of Justice. The investigation now turned its full attention to Daphne Wright. On August 31st, 2016, detectives visited her home in Houston. She lived a seemingly structured life with her husband and 3 daughters, presenting herself as a strong, direct presence within her household and community. When questioned, Daphne acknowledged that she knew Chow Tran as a client, but declined to provide details regarding their financial transactions. She maintained a calm, distant demeanor, offering no assistance to the investigators. Undeterred, detectives secured an arrest warrant and a search warrant for her residence. During the search of her home, investigators discovered detailed financial ledgers. These records revealed that Daphne charged substantial fees, ranging from $10,000 to $40,000 for her spiritual services, which included rituals to alter fortunes and address personal disputes. Her husband, Howard, cooperated with the police, maintaining his complete ignorance of any criminal activity and asserting his belief in his wife's innocence. To build a successful prosecution against the primary organizer of the crime, the state recognized the necessity of securing definitive testimony. In 2015, financial investigators subpoenaed Chow Tran's records, discovering that following the passing of his in-laws, he had purchased a new home, and the sewing business had been permanently closed. Under the guidance of his legal counsel, Chow eventually agreed to speak with prosecutors. He presented a narrative in which his family had felt completely dominated by Daphne's perceived spiritual authority. He claimed that they believed she possessed the power to cast devastating curses as easily as she could lift them, leaving them in a state of constant fear regarding their unresolved debt. Chow made the startling assertion that his mother-in-law, Hong Li, had grown so desperate to protect her family from spiritual harm that she had suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to satisfy Daphne. He claimed that Daphne had embraced the idea, insisting that both elderly parents must pass away to ensure the insurance payout would cover the entirety of the debt. While investigators found the notion of Hong volunteering for such a fate highly implausible, they recognized that Chow's testimony was vital to securing a conviction against Daphne. In exchange for his full cooperation and testimony, prosecutors offered Chow immunity. The trial of Daphne Wright commenced on August 26, 2019. Chow Tran took the stand, describing Daphne as an exceptionally demanding and manipulative individual who would stop at nothing to secure the funds she believed she was owed. The defense vigorously challenged Chow's credibility, arguing that he had fabricated the story of spiritual coercion to obscure his own financial motives. They pointed out the complete lack of written documentation, emails, or receipts verifying the existence of a $280,000 debt. The defense contended that Chow had orchestrated the plan to secure the $850,000 in insurance benefits for his own personal enrichment, highlighting that he had received immunity while remaining deeply complicit. Despite the defense's arguments, the jury deliberated carefully on the evidence presented, including the testimonies of Willie and Bobby Guillory. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on the charges of capital murder. Daphne Wright was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The resolution of the trial brought a quiet end to a long and painful chapter for the community. For the detectives who had dedicated years of their lives to uncovering the truth, the outcome was bittersweet. While the individuals who carried out the physical act and the person who organized it were held accountable, the immunity granted to Chow Tran remained a point of professional contemplation. Yet, the primary focus remained on honoring the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, two hardworking individuals who had ventured across the world to build a legacy of love and unity for their family. Their journey, marked by hope, perseverance, and an enduring commitment to their heritage, serve as a reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the quiet, persistent pursuit of justice. The summer sun of Texas had a way of baking the pavement until the air itself seemed to shimmer with heat. But on the morning of June 10th, 2012, the air in Arlington carried a different kind of stillness. It was early, just past 7:29 in the morning, when the quiet of a residential neighborhood was broken by the arrival of a police cruiser. Officer Weller, a seasoned responder with 14 years of service, guided his patrol car to a halt outside an apartment complex. He had received a dispatch for a welfare check, a routine call that usually ended with a simple explanation, an oversleeping relative, a misplaced telephone, or a brief trip to the market. But as he stepped out into the humid morning air, he saw a family gathered on the sidewalk, their faces etched with a deep, silent worry. Among them was Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant who had made the call. Chow was the primary link between his family and the wider English-speaking community of Arlington. Having worked closely with his father-in-law, Long Nguyen, and his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, Chow explained to the officer that they had come to check on the elderly couple, only to find the apartment silent. The family had noticed a window slightly ajar, a detail that filled them with an inexplicable dread. They stood outside, too terrified to cross the threshold themselves. Officer Weller walked up to the apartment door, calling out as he entered. The living room was in complete disarray. Compact discs were scattered across the floor, drawer handles hung open, and furniture had been pushed aside as if in a hurried search for valuables. It bore all the traditional hallmarks of a burglary. He searched the kitchen, then the bathroom. Finding nothing, he walked into the quiet bedroom. At first glance, the room appeared empty, and Weller felt a brief wave of relief. He assumed the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk to escape the heat, leaving their home vulnerable to an opportunistic thief. But as he turned to leave, the beam of his flashlight caught a series of dark-hand smudges on the wall next to a small, narrow closet. A sudden hesitation took hold of him. A veteran's instinct whispered that something was deeply wrong behind that closet door. Taking a breath, he pulled it open. Inside the cramped space lay Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. They were bound with heavy duct tape, their heads wrapped tightly. The sheer brutality of the scene left the officer in a state of profound shock. He stepped back out into the living room, unable to speak, unable to even use his radio for several long moments. When he finally regained his composure, he requested immediate assistance from a supervisor and the homicide unit. Soon, Detective Stewart and his team from the Arlington Police Department arrived. Stewart, a veteran with 21 years in homicide, found himself shaken by the senseless violence inflicted upon an elderly, defenseless couple. The physical evidence pointed toward a robbery gone wrong, but the extreme nature of the binding suggested something far more personal. On the coffee table, investigators found unusual items designed to look like the remnants of a wild night: a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette. Tied around a nearby beer bottle was a light blue bandana. To some, this would suggest the involvement of local street gangs, which were known to operate in parts of the region. However, Detective Stewart remained skeptical. The scene felt too perfectly arranged, almost like a stage play designed to lead investigators down a false path. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, seeking to build a legacy for their children and grandchildren. They had established a commercial sewing business in Arlington, a city with a vibrant and industrious Vietnamese community. For a time, their business flourished, even securing contracts with major entertainment brands. But by 2011, their fortunes had shifted. A major contract was lost, and the business began to struggle under a mountain of debt. In their search for a solution, the family turned to traditional beliefs. They sought the assistance of a spiritual advisor who advertised services to lift curses and bring good fortune. Chow Tran and his mother-in-law had traveled to Houston to consult with a woman named Daphne Wright. Daphne promised to restore their luck, but instead of relief, the family found themselves trapped in an escalating financial arrangement. The fees for her rituals accumulated rapidly, eventually growing to a sum between $250,000 and $280,000. As the investigation proceeded, the medical examiner revealed that the cause of death was suffocation due to the extensive duct tape wrapped around the victims' faces. The brutality of the act reinforced the detective's belief that this was not a simple burglary. A breakthrough occurred when the insurance company contacted Detective Stewart regarding a life insurance policy on the couple worth over $1 million. The primary beneficiary was Chow Tran. When questioned, Chow explained that the policy was intended to ensure the continuity of the family business in the event of a tragedy. Chow and his family possessed solid alibis for the night of the murders, having attended a birthday celebration that lasted late into the evening. For over 2 years, the case grew cold. DNA collected from a marijuana cigarette left at the scene did not match any profiles in the national database. Then, in 2015, a man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony horse theft in Houston. Because of his new felony conviction, his DNA was entered into the national system. It was an exact match for the sample recovered from the crime scene. At the time of the murders, Willie had been only 16 years old. When confronted by detectives with the DNA evidence, Willie broke down and confessed. He revealed that he had not acted alone. His uncle, Bobby Guillory, had brought him along to Arlington. Bobby had been given a key to the apartment to stage the robbery. More importantly, Willie revealed that the entire plot had been orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Daphne had demanded her money, and when the family could not pay, she declared that she wanted them dead, so the insurance policies could be collected. In December of 2015, police arrested Bobby Guillory. Facing capital murder charges, Bobby confessed to his role, confirming that Daphne had promised him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He also dropped a bombshell. Daphne had obtained the apartment key directly from Chow Tran. The revelation of Chow's involvement stunned investigators. It appeared that Chow, desperate to escape the massive debt and under the intense psychological influence of Daphne, had agreed to the plan. He had left the key under a mat for the conspirators to find. To secure a conviction against Daphne Wright, whom prosecutors viewed as the mastermind and puppet master of the entire tragedy, they offered Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his full and honest testimony. During the trial in August of 2019, Chow testified extensively, describing Daphne as a greedy and controlling figure who held immense sway over his family's decisions. The defense argued that Chow was using the spiritual advisor as a scapegoat to pocket the insurance, pay out for himself, pointing out the lack of written documentation regarding the massive debt. The jury ultimately found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in crime, although Chow Tran walked free due to his immunity agreement. The investigators maintained their belief that justice, in its own way, would eventually find its balance for everyone involved. The warmth of the Texas sun in early summer always had a way of reminding Long Gwyn of his youth. In the quiet, green outskirts of his homeland, it was a gentle warmth, the kind that settled deep into bones and promised that, no matter how difficult the journey had been, the earth would always offer a place to rest, to build and to grow. Alongside his beloved wife, Hong Lu, Long had spent his entire life believing in the quiet power of patience, hard work, and the invisible threads of destiny that connected human souls. To understand their journey is to understand the quiet strength of those who carry their entire world in a few suitcases, crossing vast oceans in search of a peaceful harbor. When the couple first arrived in the United States of America in the year 2000, they did not see a foreign land of cold concrete. They saw a grand, open canvas where their children and grandchildren could write stories of joy, achievement, and security. They settled in Arlington, a bustling city nestled in Tarrant County, where the breeze carried the laughter of a diverse and thriving Vietnamese community. For more than a decade, their home was a sanctuary of sweet aromas, traditional melodies, and the steady, rhythmic hum of sewing machines. Long and Hong had established a commercial sewing business, transforming simple fabrics into beautiful garments. It was a family endeavor, drawing their children and their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who possessed a fluent English and charismatic presence needed to represent the business to local contractors. For many years, the family thrived, even securing a wonderful and lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a global entertainment giant, bringing magic to children across the nation. But life, much like the changing seasons, is rarely a straight path of uninterrupted sunshine. By the year 2011, the grand contract had concluded, and the gentle hum of the sewing machines began to slow. In moments of quiet anxiety, the human heart often looks backward, seeking comfort in the ancient traditions and spiritual beliefs of the ancestors. Long and Hong, like many before them, believed that the flow of prosperity was governed by unseen spiritual forces, and that sometimes a helping hand was needed to lift the heavy clouds of misfortune. It was this search for hope that led the family to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor. Through a local newspaper, they discovered a woman named Daphne Wright, who operated from Houston, some 250 miles away. She promised to lift curses, restore harmony, and bring back the golden days of abundance. What began as a sincere quest for peace, however, gradually became a complicated web of reliance, debt, and deep spiritual worry. On a quiet Sunday morning on June 10, 2012, the peaceful silence of the Arlington neighborhood was broken by a call to emergency services. Chow Tran requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, noting that they had not answered their door and that a window to their apartment was unusually open when the first responding officers arrived. They were met by a worried family waiting anxiously outside. Officer Weller, a dedicated public servant with 14 years of experience, approached the residents with a calm and reassuring demeanor. Upon entering, the apartment showed signs of a sudden and chaotic intrusion. Items were scattered, and the usual pristine order of the elderly couple's home was replaced by disarray. Moving cautiously through the rooms, the officer eventually discovered the tragic truth within a small bedroom closet. The beloved elders Long and Hong had been targeted in a terrible act of greed. The initial examination suggested a staged scene designed to mimic the chaotic patterns of local street gangs. A light blue bandana wrapped around a bottle and scattered personal items were left behind as a false trail. Yet, the seasoned homicide investigators, including Detective Stewart with 21 years of service, quickly realized that this was not a random burglary. It was far too deliberate, far too personal. The investigation that followed became a testament to the tireless dedication of the local police force, who refused to let the memory of Long and Hong fade into the cold archives of unsolved cases. For more than 2 years, the team pursued every potential lead, interviewing dozens of neighbors, family members, and associates, leaving no stone unturned. The breakthrough came in the year 2015 through a remarkable twist of fate. A young man named Willie Guillory, who had been a minor at the time of the offense, was arrested in Houston on an unrelated charge. His DNA profile, newly entered into the national database, provided a perfect match to a small piece of evidence recovered from the Arlington apartment. When questioned by investigators, Willie broke down and revealed the truth. He had been led into the scheme by his uncle, Bobby Guillory, under the direction of the spiritual advisor, Daphne Wright. The plot had been born not out of gang rivalry, but out of a terrible, misplaced sense of financial desperation and greed surrounding the family's outstanding debts and life insurance policies. Bobby Guillory was soon apprehended, and he too confessed, confirming that Daphne Wright was the central coordinator who had organized the plan, believing she could claim the family's assets. The key to the apartment had been left under a mat, a tragic detail that pointed to an insider's compliance. In August of the year 2019, the wheels of justice turned fully. Daphne Wright was brought to trial, where the details of her spiritual business and the heavy financial burdens she placed on her clients were laid bare before a jury. Despite the complex nature of the testimonies, the truth prevailed. Daphne was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that she could never again exploit the faith and hope of vulnerable families. Though the legal journey left some questions lingering regarding the full extent of everyone's involvement, the memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu remains a shining beacon of love, resilience, and family devotion. They are remembered not by the shadows of their final moments, but by the decades of warmth, laughter, and beautiful garments they created, wrapping their community in the enduring embrace of their heritage. The morning sun always had a way of softening the harsh edges of Arlington, Texas, casting a golden, warm glow over the sprawling suburban landscapes. For many years, this city had been a sanctuary for families seeking new beginnings, a place where different cultures interlace like threads in a grand, colorful tapestry. Among those who had crossed oceans to weave their own thread into this community were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They were a couple who carried the quiet dignity of their homeland, Vietnam, in every step they took, possessing a warmth that endeared them to everyone they met. They had lived lives of honest labor, building a commercial sewing business in the ground up with the hope of leaving a lasting legacy. For their 3 children and grandchildren, their lives were defined by deep family bonds, a shared history of resilience, and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Yet, on the morning of June the 10th, 2012, that peaceful dream was shattered in a way that left even the most seasoned investigators in a state of profound disbelief. It began at 7:29 in the morning with a phone call to emergency dispatchers. The voice on the other end belonged to 38-year-old Chow Tran, a Vietnamese immigrant and the son-in-law of the elderly couple. His voice carried a tremor of deep worry as he requested a welfare check on his in-laws, explaining that they were not answering their door and that things at their apartment did not look right. Chow explained that his father-in-law, Long, was in his 70s, and that his family had gathered outside the residence. Too terrified by the unusually open window and the eerie silence to venture inside themselves, when the responding officers arrived at the quiet apartment complex, they immediately sensed that this was no ordinary welfare check. It was rare to receive such requests so early in the morning, and the sight of an entire family standing outside in the morning chill, paralyzed by anxiety, signaled that something was terribly wrong. Upon entering the apartment, the signs of what appeared to be a burglary in progress were everywhere. The rooms were in disarray, with drawers pulled out and items scattered across the floor. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, moved through the quiet home, calling out into the silence. There was no response. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely empty. At first glance, the bedroom also appeared vacant. Relieved, the officer turned to leave, thinking perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk. But as he turned back toward the door, his flashlight beam caught a series of small, dark-hand smudges on the wall next to a narrow closet. A sudden, chilling intuition urged him to hesitate. Following his duty, he slowly pulled open the closet door. Inside, the tragic reality of what had occurred was laid bare. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu were gone, their lives taken in an unspeakably violent and cruel manner. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, and their heads and mouths were covered in layers of the thick adhesive. The scene was incredibly chaotic and bloody, indicating a fierce struggle. For the responding officer, the sight was a devastating shock that momentarily stole his ability to speak or even use his radio to call for backup. When the homicide detectives arrived, led by veterans who had spent over 21 years investigating the city's darkest corners, they too were deeply shaken. It was clear that the couple had been subjected to severe physical force before their passing. Initial clues scattered around the apartment seemed to point in many directions. There was a plate with crushed prescription pills on a table, a discarded marijuana cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. To the investigators, these items felt almost too deliberate, like a carefully staged theatrical scene. The light blue bandana was a color often associated with active local gangs known for extorting local businesses, and at first, a robbery or gang extortion gone wrong seemed like the most logical theory. Yet, experienced detectives knew that sometimes things that appear too perfect are designed to mislead. Real gang members rarely left such neat, obvious calling cards after committing such extreme crime. They suspected the scene had been staged to throw them off the track. As the community mourned the loss of the sweet, generous couple who had never bothered a soul, the police began the painstaking process of interviewing family members and collecting forensic evidence. Because Chow Tran spoke the most fluent English, he became the primary spokesperson for the grieving family. He explained to detectives that the family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride home. That was the last time anyone admitted to seeing them alive. Chow painted a picture of a sewing business that, despite their best efforts, had fallen on hard times. They had once secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a major commercial giant, even producing items for Disney. But by 2011, that contract was lost, and the business began a steep downward spiral. Desperate to save their livelihood and protect their family from financial ruin, the couple turned to the deeply rooted spiritual traditions of their youth. In many traditional cultures, when a family faces sudden, overwhelming misfortune such as bankruptcy or severe legal trouble, they seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform cleansing rituals and ward off perceived curses. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston, approximately 250 miles away. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed a unique ability to lift powerful curses and bring immense good fortune to those in need. Hoping to turn their luck around, Chow and Hong traveled to Houston to consult with Daphne. She performed elaborate rituals, promising that their business would soon flourish once more. But rather than bringing prosperity, this relationship marked the beginning of a much darker chapter. Over the course of a year, as the business continued to struggle, the family became deeply indebted to Daphne. She ran her spiritual services on credit, and the debt quickly ballooned to an astronomical sum of between $250,000 and $280,000. As the investigation into the murders deepened, detectives uncovered a major financial detail. The elderly couple had life insurance policies totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as a beneficiary. When questioned about the policy, Chow maintained that it was a standard business precaution meant to ensure the family could sustain the sewing business if one of them were to pass away. He and his family provided what appeared to be airtight alibis for the night of the crime, explaining they had been playing cards together until late in the evening. For over 2 years, the case remained cold. The forensic samples collected from the crime scene, including the DNA from the discarded marijuana cigarette, did not match anyone in the national databases. It was a frustrating period of silence for the investigators, who refused to let the memory of Long and Hong fade. The breakthrough finally came in 2015, triggered by an entirely unrelated and almost bizarre event. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse near Houston because he had been a 16-year-old minor at the time of the murders in 2012. His DNA had never been entered into the national database. But as an adult felon in 2015, his profile was finally registered, triggering an immediate and perfect match with the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. When detectives brought Willie in for questioning, the young man quickly broke down. He confessed that he had been present, but insisted he was merely a follower. He pointed the finger at his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, who had enlisted his help for a job in Arlington. According to Willie, they had been given a key to the apartment to stage a burglary. And the entire crime scene, including the bandana, the pills, and the marijuana, had been carefully set up to make it look like the work of local gang members. Most shocking of all was Willie's revelation that the entire crime was a murder-for-hire plot, orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Willie recalled hearing Daphne tell his uncle that the family owed her a vast sum of money, and that if they did not pay up, she wanted them dead. Armed with this information, the police arrested Bobby Guillory in December of 2015. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, also confessed, expressing deep remorse and fear. He admitted that Daphne had targeted his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He revealed that Daphne had learned of the substantial life insurance policies and saw them as the only way to collect the massive debt she felt she was owed. Bobby then dropped a final, stunning bombshell. He claimed that the key to the apartment had come directly from Chow Tran. Detectives were stunned by this revelation of familial betrayal. They focused their efforts on Daphne Wright, arresting her at her Houston home in late 2016. A search of her residence revealed detailed business ledgers showing she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her spiritual services and curse removals. Despite her cold and defiant demeanor, the evidence against her was mounting. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as an incredibly greedy and manipulative woman who exercised a powerful, almost hypnotic control over his mind and body. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had been so terrified of Daphne's spiritual wrath that she had actually suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay the debt. While investigators found this claim highly implausible, Chow's testimony was crucial. He admitted to leaving the apartment key under a doormat for the perpetrators under Daphne's instructions. In September of 2019, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy, though the lack of charges against Chow Tran left a lingering sense of incompletion for the detectives who had dedicated years to the case. They found solace in knowing that the truth had finally been brought into the light. The memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, two gentle souls who had crossed the world in search of a peaceful life, was honored by the tireless pursuit of justice, leaving a powerful lesson about the dangers of greed and the enduring strength of truth. Chapter 1: The Horizon of a New Beginning. The sun rose over Arlington, Texas, casting a warm, golden hue across the quiet suburban neighborhoods. To the passing traveler, this was a city of progress, a place where concrete highways intersected with green parks, and where the gentle hum of morning traffic whispered of daily routines and honest labor. But to the families who had traveled across oceans to settle here, it was something far greater. It was a physical manifestation of a promise, the sanctuary where dreams, once whispered in the quiet nights of distant lands, could finally take root and flourish. Among those who found their peace in this bustling community were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They had arrived in the United States in the year 2000, carrying with them very little in the way of material wealth, but possessing an abundance of hope, a profound dedication to hard work, and a deep reverence for their heritage. They were a gentle couple, known to their neighbors for their quiet kindness, their ready smiles, and the meticulous care they took of their modest home. In their native Vietnam, they had learned the value of resilience. Having lived through decades of transition, they understood that true security was not built overnight, but was woven slowly, thread by thread, much like the fabrics they handled daily in their commercial sewing business. When they first arrived in Texas, they brought their 3 children, and immediately sought out ways to contribute to the local community. Arlington possessed a vibrant, growing Vietnamese American population, a community that had established its roots in several waves of immigration, particularly after the historic events of 1975. Long and Hong saw in this community a beautiful tapestry of old and new. Here, one could find traditional markets selling fragrant herbs and fresh ingredients, alongside modern businesses operated by energetic young entrepreneurs. The older generation worked tirelessly to preserve their language, their values, and their spiritual traditions, while ensuring that their children and grandchildren received the very best education the Western world had to offer. With the help of their son-in-law, Chow Tran, who possessed a strong command of the English language and an outgoing personality, Long and Hong established their sewing enterprise. Chow became the public face of the business, interacting with contractors, negotiating terms, and navigating the complexities of American commerce. For nearly a decade, their efforts were met with remarkable success. They secured lucrative contracts to manufacture garments for major commercial entities, including legendary organizations like Disney. It seemed, for a beautiful stretch of time, that the American dream was not just a distant ideal, but a living reality that they held in their very hands. Chapter 2: The Gathering Shadows. But life, as any seasoned traveler knows, is a series of seasons. By the year 2011, the bright summer of their success began to give way to a challenging autumn. The large contracts that had sustained the sewing business began to dwindle, and the family found themselves facing unexpected financial pressures. In times of difficulty, human beings naturally seek comfort in the familiar, reaching back to the traditions that have sustained their ancestors for generations. In the cultural heritage that Long and Hong cherished, there existed a deep respect for spiritual balance. For thousands of years, people have believed in the existence of unseen forces that govern prosperity, luck, and family harmony. When a business faltered or when sickness touched a household, it was not uncommon to seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor, someone who could look beyond the physical world, diagnose the source of misfortune, and perform rituals to restore peace and abundance. Chow Tran, sharing his family's concern for the failing business, began to search for a solution. It was during this period of vulnerability that they came across an advertisement in a local Vietnamese language newspaper. The advertisement spoke of a spiritual advisor located in Houston, some 250 miles away, who possessed the ability to lift curses, invite good fortune, and restore harmony to troubled lives. Her name was Daphne Wright. Encouraged by his mother-in-law, Hong Lu, who held a deep and innocent faith in these traditional practices, Chow made contact with Daphne. The journey to Houston was undertaken with hearts full of hope. They met at Daphne's residence, where she presented herself as a powerful mediator of the spiritual realm. She agreed to perform the necessary rituals to turn their business affairs around. To a family in distress, the promise of a spiritual shield was incredibly comforting. They returned to Arlington with renewed optimism, believing that the dark clouds would soon dissipate. However, as the months passed, the business did not recover. Instead of questioning the efficacy of the rituals, the family's anxiety only deepened. They became caught in a cycle of dependency, believing that perhaps the negative forces affecting them were stronger than initially realized, requiring more elaborate and significantly more expensive spiritual interventions. Daphne Wright, recognizing the depth of their desperation, began to extend services on credit. Over time, the financial obligations ballooned, reaching an astonishing sum between $250,000 and $280,000. This was a debt the family could not possibly hope to pay. Yet they remained terrified of the spiritual consequences of failing to honor their commitments to a woman they believed held the power to bless or curse their lives. Chapter 3: An Autumn Morning in Arlington. The transition from spring to summer in Texas is often marked by sudden intense heat. But the morning of June 10th, 2012, began with a deceptively peaceful stillness. At 7:29 in the morning, the Emergency Dispatch Center in Arlington received a call. The caller was Chow Tran, his voice trembling with a mixture of concern and anxiety. He requested a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, who resided in a modest apartment nearby. Chow explained to the operator that his son and wife had gone to the apartment to check on the couple, as they had not been able to reach them. They had noticed that a window to the residence was slightly open, and things did not appear correct from the outside. Too anxious to enter themselves, they waited for the authorities to arrive. Officer Weller, a dedicated member of the Arlington Police Department with 14 years of service, was dispatched to the scene. When he arrived, he found the family members gathered outside. It was an unusual sight for so early in the morning, and the palpable tension in the air immediately signaled that this was no ordinary welfare check. Upon entering the apartment, Officer Weller observed signs of what appeared to be a burglary. The living space was in disarray, with items scattered as if someone had searched the home in a hurry. He called out, his voice echoing through the quiet rooms, but there was no response. The kitchen, the bathroom, and the living room were empty. He approached the bedroom, his focus entirely on finding the elderly couple and ensuring their safety. Initially, the room appeared unoccupied. He prepared to turn and leave, hoping that perhaps they had simply gone for an early morning walk, when his flashlight illuminated hand smudges on the wall adjacent to a small closet. A sense of professional instinct, combined with sudden, quiet hesitation, washed over him. He approached the closet door and opened it. Inside, he made a discovery that would haunt his memory for years to come. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu were inside, bound securely with duct tape. There was no life left in them. Chapter 4, The Pursuit of Truth. The arrival of the Arlington homicide investigators marked the beginning of a meticulous search for answers. Detective Stewart, a veteran with 21 years of experience in the division, assumed leadership of the investigation. The scene was one of intense disarray, suggesting a struggle had occurred near the entrance before moving further into the apartment. Among the scattered household items, investigators discovered several peculiar clues. On the coffee table lay a plate with crushed prescription pills, and nearby, a discarded marijuana cigarette. Most striking, however, was a light blue bandana wrapped carefully around a beer bottle. To an observer, these items strongly suggested the involvement of local street gangs, who were known to operate in the wider region and occasionally target local businesses. However, Detective Stewart and his team remained analytical. While the staging of the scene pointed toward gang activity, the sheer severity of the violence directed at a peaceful, elderly couple seemed disproportionate for a simple robbery. They began to consider the possibility that the scene had been intentionally staged to mislead the investigation. The subsequent autopsies revealed the tragic reality of the couple's passing. While they had sustained blunt force injuries, the actual cause of death was suffocation, resulting from the extensive application of duct tape. This revelation deepened the investigators' determination to bring those responsible to justice. This was not a random act of impulse. It was a deliberate, targeted act. Chapter 5, Unseen Connections. In the days following the discovery, investigators worked tirelessly to construct a profile of the victims' lives. Searching for any possible motive, they interviewed neighbors, business associates, and family members, searching for any thread that might lead to a suspect. Chow Tran, as the primary English speaker for the family, cooperated fully with the initial inquiries. He explained that the family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate Long's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves thoroughly, leaving the gathering around 10:30 in the evening with a ride from another family member. This was the last time they were seen alive. Chow also discussed the financial challenges of the sewing business, confirming that it had struggled significantly, but he expressed absolute bewilderment as to who would wish harm upon his gentle in-laws. He painted a picture of a sweet, generous couple who had no enemies and lived a quiet life dedicated to their family. A routine inquiry by Detective Stewart with insurance providers soon introduced a complex new element to the case. He learned that a substantial life insurance policy, valued at approximately $1 million, existed on the couple. The designated beneficiary of this policy was Chow Tran himself. When questioned about the policy, Chow explained that it had been established as a protective measure to ensure the continuity of the family business in the event of an unexpected tragedy. Given the airtight alibi provided by Chow and his family for the night of the occurrence, and the lack of any matching physical evidence at the scene, investigators could not establish a direct link. The deoxyribonucleic acid profiles obtained from the cigarette at the scene did not match Chow, any family members, or any individuals registered in the national database. For over 2 years, the investigation continued without a major breakthrough. The files remained on the detectives' desks, a constant reminder of an unsolved tragedy, waiting for the one piece of evidence that would unlock the truth. Chapter 6. The Unlikely Catalyst. Justice often moves along unexpected pathways. In October of 2015, over 3 years after the passing of Long and Hong, a seemingly unrelated event in Houston provided the critical breakthrough. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for the theft of a horse, a felony offense in the state of Texas. Because of this felony charge, his physical profile was entered into the national database. Shortly thereafter, the automated system identified a perfect match between Willie's profile and the evidence recovered from the cigarette at the Arlington apartment in 2012. At the time of the incident, Willie had been only 16 years old, which explained why his profile had not previously appeared in adult databases. Armed with this definitive scientific link, investigators brought Willie in for questioning. Under careful interrogation, the young man's resolve collapsed. He broke down, weeping, and admitted his presence at the scene, but insisted he had not acted alone. He revealed that his uncle, Bobby Guillory, had recruited him for a trip to Arlington in June of 2012. Willie explained that his uncle possessed a key to the apartment and had instructed him to help stage the scene to look like a gang-related burglary, utilizing the bandana, the pills, and the bottle. When asked why they had targeted the specific couple, Willie delivered a statement that shifted the entire direction of the case. He asserted that the entire event was a contract arrangement orchestrated by a woman named Daphne. Right. Chapter 7. The Mastermind Revealed. The revelation of Daphne Wright's involvement connected the separate pieces of the puzzle. Investigators now understood that this was not a random tragedy, but a calculated plan born of greed and manipulation. Detectives traveled to Houston to locate Bobby Guillory. Upon his arrest, Bobby also confessed to his role, confirming that Daphne had promised him $10,000 to carry out the act. He explained that he had been in a desperate financial situation at the time, having lost his employment, and had allowed himself to be swayed by Daphne's promises. Bobby described Daphne as an assertive, controlling figure who managed her spiritual consulting business with absolute authority. He revealed that the financial debt owed by the Arlington family had reached a point where Daphne demanded resolution. Knowing of the substantial life insurance policies, she had devised a plan to eliminate the couple so that the insurance funds could be collected and used to satisfy the outstanding debt. Most shockingly, Bobby claimed that the key to the apartment had been provided directly by Chow Tran. With this evidence, investigators arrested Daphne right at her home in Houston. A search of her residence revealed detailed business ledgers, documenting transactions where she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for spiritual services. Chapter 8. The Scales of Justice. The legal proceedings that followed brought the tragic narrative to its final resolution. To secure the conviction of the primary organizer, prosecutors made the difficult decision to offer immunity to Chow Tran in exchange for his complete and truthful testimony against Daphne Wright Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory. In the courtroom, Chow presented a detailed account of the events. He described how the family had become entirely dependent on Daphne, believing in her spiritual authority and fearing the consequences of her anger. He testified that the pressure of the debt had created a state of complete desperation, leading to the tragic decision to sacrifice his in-laws to satisfy the financial demands. The defense argued vigorously that Chow was a willing participant who had directed the events for his own financial gain, highlighting the lack of written documentation regarding the massive spiritual debt. However, the testimony provided a clear and compelling narrative of the manipulation and greed that had driven the conspiracy. In September of 2019, the jury returned a verdict of guilty against Daphne Wright for capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby Guillory and Willie Guillory also faced the legal consequences of their actions, ensuring that those who had physically carried out the act were removed from society. While the investigators expressed professional disappointment that Chow Tran did not face criminal charges due to the immunity agreement, they took solace in the knowledge that the primary force behind the tragedy had been held accountable. The community of Arlington and the family members who remained could finally find a sense of peace, knowing that the truth had been brought completely into the light of day. The morning sun always had a way of softening the harsh edges of Arlington, Texas, casting a golden, warm glow over the sprawling suburban landscapes. For many years, this city had been a sanctuary for families seeking new beginnings, a place where different cultures interlace like threads in a grand, colorful tapestry. Among those who had crossed oceans to weave their own thread into this community were Long Nguyen and his beloved wife, Hong Lu. They were a couple who carried the quiet dignity of their homeland, Vietnam, in every step they took, possessing a warmth that endeared them to everyone they met. They had lived lives of honest labor, building a commercial sewing business in the ground up with the hope of leaving a lasting legacy for their 3 children and grandchildren. Their lives were defined by deep family bonds, a shared history of resilience, and an unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Yet, on the morning of June the 10th, 2012, that peaceful dream was shattered in a way that left even the most seasoned investigators in a state of profound disbelief. It began at 7:29 in the morning with a phone call to emergency dispatchers. The voice on the other end belonged to 38-year-old Chow Tran, a Vietnamese immigrant and the son-in-law of the elderly couple. His voice carried a tremor of deep worry as he requested a welfare check on his in-laws, explaining that they were not answering their door and that things at their apartment did not look right. Chow explained that his father-in-law, Long, was in his 70s, and that his family had gathered outside the residence. Too terrified by the unusually open window and the eerie silence to venture inside themselves, when the responding officers arrived at the quiet apartment complex, they immediately sensed that this was no ordinary welfare check. It was rare to receive such requests so early in the morning, and the sight of an entire family standing outside in the morning chill, paralyzed by anxiety, signaled that something was terribly wrong. Upon entering the apartment, the signs of what appeared to be a burglary in progress were everywhere. The rooms were in disarray, with drawers pulled out and items scattered across the floor. Officer Weller, a dedicated officer with 14 years of experience, moved through the quiet home, calling out into the silence. There was no response. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were completely empty. At first glance, the bedroom also appeared vacant. Relieved, the officer turned to leave, thinking perhaps the elderly couple had simply gone for an early morning walk. But as he turned back toward the door, his flashlight beam caught a series of small, dark hand smudges on the wall next to a narrow closet. A sudden, chilling intuition urged him to hesitate. Following his duty, he slowly pulled open the closet door. Inside, the tragic reality of what had occurred was laid bare. Long Nguyen and Hong Lu were gone, their lives taken in an unspeakably violent and cruel manner. They had been bound tightly with duct tape, and their heads and mouths were covered in layers of the thick adhesive. The scene was incredibly chaotic and bloody, indicating a fierce struggle. For the responding officer, the sight was a devastating shock that momentarily stole his ability to speak or even use his radio. To call for backup, when the homicide detectives arrived, led by veterans who had spent over 21 years investigating the city's darkest corners, they too were deeply shaken. It was clear that the couple had been subjected to severe physical force before their passing. Initial clues scattered around the apartment seemed to point in many directions. There was a plate with crushed prescription pills on a table, a discarded marijuana cigarette, and a light blue bandana wrapped around a beer bottle. To the investigators, these items felt almost too deliberate, like a carefully staged theatrical scene. The light blue bandana was a color often associated with active local gangs known for extorting local businesses, and at first, a robbery or gang extortion gone wrong seemed like the most logical theory. Yet, experienced detectives knew that sometimes things that appear too perfect are designed to mislead. Real gang members rarely left such neat, obvious calling cards after committing such extreme crime. They suspected the scene had been staged to throw them off the track. As the community mourned the loss of the sweet, generous couple who had never bothered a soul, the police began the painstaking process of interviewing family members and collecting forensic evidence. Because Chow Tran spoke the most fluent English, he became the primary spokesperson for the grieving family. He explained to detectives that the family had gathered the previous evening to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride home. That was the last time anyone admitted to seeing them alive. Chow painted a picture of a sewing business that, despite their best efforts, had fallen on hard times. They had once secured a highly lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a major commercial giant, even producing items for Disney. But by 2011, that contract was lost, and the business began a steep downward spiral. Desperate to save their livelihood and protect their family from financial ruin, the couple turned to the deeply rooted spiritual traditions of their youth. In many traditional cultures, when a family faces sudden, overwhelming misfortune such as bankruptcy or severe legal trouble, they seek the guidance of a spiritual advisor to perform cleansing rituals and ward off perceived curses. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law, Hong, discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor based in Houston, approximately 250 miles away. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she possessed a unique ability to lift powerful curses and bring immense good fortune to those in need. Hoping to turn their luck around, Chow and Hong traveled to Houston to consult with Daphne. She performed elaborate rituals, promising that their business would soon flourish once more. But rather than bringing prosperity, this relationship marked the beginning of a much darker chapter. Over the course of a year, as the business continued to struggle, the family became deeply indebted to Daphne. She ran her spiritual services on credit, and the debt quickly ballooned to an astronomical sum of between $250,000 and $280,000. As the investigation into the murders deepened, detectives uncovered a major financial detail. The elderly couple had life insurance policies totaling at least $1 million, with Chow Tran named as a beneficiary. When questioned about the policy, Chow maintained that it was a standard business precaution meant to ensure the family could sustain the sewing business if one of them were to pass away. He and his family provided what appeared to be airtight alibis for the night of the crime, explaining they had been playing cards together until late in the evening. For over 2 years, the case remained cold. The forensic samples collected from the crime scene, including the DNA from the discarded marijuana cigarette, did not match anyone in the national databases. It was a frustrating period of silence for the investigators. who refused to let the memory of Long and Hong fade. The breakthrough finally came in 2015, triggered by an entirely unrelated and almost bizarre event. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for a felony involving the theft of a horse near Houston because he had been a 16-year-old minor at the time of the murders in 2012. His DNA had never been entered into the national database. But as an adult felon in 2015, his profile was finally registered, triggering an immediate and perfect match with the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette at the Arlington crime scene. When detectives brought Willie in for questioning, the young man quickly broke down. He confessed that he had been present, but insisted he was merely a follower. He pointed the finger at his uncle, 49-year-old Bobby Guillory, who had enlisted his help for a job in Arlington. According to Willie, they had been given a key to the apartment to stage a burglary. An entire crime scene, including the bandana, the pills, and the marijuana, had been carefully set up to make it look like the work of local gang members. Most shocking of all was Willie's revelation that the entire crime was a murder-for-hire plot, orchestrated by Daphne Wright, the spiritual advisor. Willie recalled hearing Daphne tell his uncle that the family owed her a vast sum of money, and that if they did not pay up, she wanted them dead. Armed with this information, the police arrested Bobby Guillory in December of 2015. Bobby, who had no prior criminal record, also confessed, expressing deep remorse and fear. He admitted that Daphne had targeted his financial desperation, offering him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He revealed that Daphne had learned of the substantial life insurance policies and saw them as the only way to collect the massive debt she felt she was owed. Bobby then dropped a final, stunning bombshell. He claimed that the key to the apartment had come directly from Chow Tran. Detectives were stunned by this revelation of familial betrayal. They focused their efforts on Daphne Wright, arresting her at her Houston home in late 2016. A search of her residence revealed detailed business ledgers showing she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her spiritual services and curse removals. Despite her cold and defiant demeanor, the evidence against her was mounting. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a difficult decision. They offered Chow Tran immunity from prosecution in exchange for his full, truthful testimony. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as an incredibly greedy and manipulative woman who exercised a powerful, almost hypnotic control over his mind and body. He claimed that his mother-in-law, Hong, had been so terrified of Daphne's spiritual wrath that she had actually suggested sacrificing herself so the family could collect the insurance money to pay the debt. While investigators found this claim highly implausible, Chow's testimony was crucial. He admitted to leaving the apartment key under a doormat for the perpetrators under Daphne's instructions. In September of 2019, the jury found Daphne Wright guilty of capital murder, sentencing her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Bobby and Willie Guillory also faced justice for their roles in the tragedy, though the lack of charges against Chow Tran left a lingering sense of incompletion for the detectives who had dedicated years to the case. They found solace in knowing that the truth had finally been brought into the light. The memory of Long Nguyen and Hong Lu, two gentle souls who had crossed the world in search of a peaceful life, was honored by the tireless pursuit of justice, leaving a powerful lesson about the dangers of greed and the enduring strength of truth. The humid morning air of Arlington, Texas, was quiet on the 10th of June in the year 2012. The sun had barely begun to cast its long, golden fingers across the manicured lawns of the residential neighborhoods when the peace of the early hour was broken. At exactly 7:29 in the morning, a telephone rang in the emergency dispatch center. On the other end of the line was Chow Tran, a 38-year-old Vietnamese immigrant whose voice trembled with a quiet, mounting anxiety. He was calling to request a welfare check on his elderly in-laws, Long Nguyen and Hong Lu. The dispatcher, accustomed to the calm routine of early Sunday mornings, listened carefully as Chow spelled out the names, explaining that his father-in-law was a gentle man in his early 70s. Chow explained that his family had gathered outside the apartment, worried because no one was answering the door, and they had noticed an open window that simply did not look right. Too terrified to venture inside themselves, they waited on the pavement, praying that their fears were merely the product of overactive imaginations. Within minutes, a responding officer arrived at the scene. Officer Weller, a seasoned professional with 14 years of experience, immediately felt a shift in atmosphere. This did not look like a typical welfare check. An entire family was standing outside the quiet apartment complex in the early light of dawn, their faces painted with a mixture of hope and dread. Stepping to the front door, Weller called out, his voice echoing in the stillness of the home. There was no answer. The living room, kitchen, and bathroom were empty, though they bore the unsettling signs of disarray. The only room left to check was the master bedroom. Weller entered, scanning the space with his flashlight, initially seeing nothing that stood out. He turned to leave, feeling a brief wave of relief, thinking perhaps the family had simply gone out for an early morning stroll. But as he reached the threshold, his flashlight caught something on the wall next to a very small closet. They were hand smudges, dark and frantic. A heavy silence fell over the room as Weller hesitated. Every instinct told him to walk away, but his duty compelled him forward. He reached out and opened the closet door. What he discovered inside was a scene of profound sorrow and shocking cruelty. Long and Hong, the beloved patriarch and matriarch of the family, were huddled inside, bound tightly with duct tape. It was immediately clear that they had passed away. For Weller, even with his years on the force, the shock was paralyzing. He walked out of the bedroom, unable to speak or even use his radio for several long moments. When he finally gathered his composure, he requested a supervisor and a crime scene unit. Soon, Detective Stewart, a veteran homicide investigator with 21 years of experience, arrived at the apartment. The scene was deeply troubling. It was clear that a struggle had begun the moment the elderly couple crossed their threshold. There was evidence of a violent disturbance near the front entrance, with traces of a struggle leading all the way to the back room. The apartment had been ransacked, with compact discs scattered across the floor, suggesting a robbery. Yet, to the experienced eyes of the detectives, some of the clues felt almost too deliberate. On the coffee table sat a plate of crushed prescription pills and a discarded marijuana cigarette. Most striking of all was a light blue bandana wrapped neatly around a beer bottle, left on display like a calling card. The local gang unit confirmed that the blue bandana was associated with active local gangs known for extortion, but the investigators remained skeptical. The scene felt staged, as if someone had meticulously arranged the clues to point the finger at local street thugs, masking a much more personal and dark motive. To understand why anyone would wish to harm Long and Hong, one had to understand their journey. The couple had immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in the year 2000, bringing with them their 3 children, their treasured traditions, and a shared dream of building a prosperous legacy. They settled in Arlington, a vibrant city with a large, supportive Vietnamese community that had flourished since the late 1970s. Long and Hong started a commercial sewing business, working tirelessly to establish themselves. They enlisted the help of their son-in-law, Chow, who spoke the fluent English necessary to secure contracts and manage relationships with corporate clients. For nearly a decade, their hard work paid off, culminating in a lucrative contract to manufacture garments for a major commercial giant, including well-known brands like Disney. However, by the year 2011, their good fortune began to fade. The loss of the Disney contract dealt a heavy blow to the family business, and they found themselves slipping into financial distress. In accordance with traditional beliefs, the family sought a spiritual solution to lift what they perceived as a persistent curse on their livelihood. For generations, Many in their homeland believed that a spiritual advisor could offer protection, healing, and a way to restore harmony during times of crisis. Searching through a local Vietnamese newspaper, Chow and his mother-in-law discovered an advertisement for a spiritual advisor located 250 miles away in Houston. The advisor, a woman named Daphne Wright, claimed she could remove bad curses and bring immense good fortune to those in need. Hoping to save the family business, Chow traveled to Houston to consult with Daphne. She performed a series of rituals, and for a short time, the family felt a renewed sense of hope. Yet, the business did not recover, and the family sank deeper into debt. Instead of seeking a different path, Chow continued to place his trust in Daphne, purchasing her expensive services on credit. Over the course of months, the outstanding balance ballooned to a staggering sum of between $250,000 and $280,000. Daphne, operating as a spiritual loan shark, grew increasingly impatient and demanding. She made it clear that she expected to be paid, one way or another, and she possessed a cold determination that terrified the family. As the investigation into the double homicide began, detectives interviewed the family members. Chow, acting as the primary spokesperson, provided a seemingly airtight alibi. He explained that on the night of the tragedy, the entire family had gathered at his home to celebrate his father-in-law's birthday. The elderly couple had enjoyed themselves, staying until 10:30 before receiving a ride home from another relative. Chow cooperated fully, providing timelines and answering questions, which initially kept him from being viewed as a primary suspect. DNA and fingerprint samples were collected from the family, but none matched the evidence left on the marijuana cigarette at the crime scene. With no matches in the national database, the case slowly went cold, remaining unresolved for over 2 years. The breakthrough came in the year 2015 through an unexpected turn of events. A young man named Willie Guillory was arrested for stealing a horse in Houston, a felony in the state of Texas. Because Willie had been only 16 years old and a minor at the time of the murders in 2012, his DNA had not been in the national database. Now, as an adult with a felony conviction, his profile was entered into the system, triggering an immediate match with the DNA found on the marijuana cigarette left at the staged crime, seen in Arlington. When detectives brought Willie in for questioning, the young man quickly broke down. He confessed his involvement, but revealed that he had not acted alone. He had been led by his 49-year-old uncle, Bobby Guillory. Willie explained that on the 9th of June in 2012, they had made the 3-hour drive from Houston to Arlington, armed with a key to the apartment, which had been provided to them to make entry effortless. They staged a burglary. They scattered items, left the beer bottle wrapped in the blue bandana, and waited. When Long and Hong returned home, a struggle ensued, and the couple was tragically incapacitated and bound. Willie's confession pointed directly to the mastermind behind the entire plot, Daphne Wright. Willie explained that Daphne had approached his uncle, claiming that a family owed her a substantial amount of money, and that she wanted them dead if they did not pay. Armed with this explosive information, detectives tracked down Bobby Guillory in December of 2015. Faced with the evidence, Bobby also confessed, placing the blame entirely on Daphne. He revealed that Daphne had promised him $10,000 to carry out the deed. He also disclosed a shocking detail. The key to the apartment had come directly from Chow Tran. The revelation of Chow's involvement stunned the investigators, who had built a relationship of trust with him over the years. It became clear that the financial pressure and the fear of Daphne's spiritual influence had driven Chow to a desperate act. Detectives learned that Chow and his wife were beneficiaries of a life insurance policy valued at $1 million. Daphne, realizing she could recoup her massive debt through the insurance payout, had pushed for the ultimate sacrifice. Chow claimed that his mother-in-law had even suggested sacrificing herself to save the family from Daphne's wrath, though investigators found this claim entirely hard to believe. In August of 2016, detectives arrested Daphne right at her home in Houston. A search of her residence revealed detailed ledgers showing that she charged clients tens of thousands of dollars for her spiritual services. Despite her cold refusal to cooperate, the state built a powerful case against her. To secure a conviction against the mastermind, prosecutors made a difficult decision to offer Chow Tran immunity in exchange for his testimony. In August of 2019, the trial of Daphne Wright began. Chow took the stand, portraying Daphne as a greedy and controlling figure who held immense psychological sway over his mind and body, while the defense argued that Chow was a complicit actor who orchestrated the plot for financial gain. The jury ultimately found Daphne guilty of capital murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, though the detectives felt a lingering sense of injustice that Chow did not face prison time for his role. They took comfort in the knowledge that the truth had finally been brought to light, and the memory of Long and Hong had been honored with the pursuit of justice. The morning sun of early summer always brought a certain warmth to the streets of Arlington, Texas, a city known for its vibrant tapestry of cultures and the quiet resilience of its neighborhoods.